top of the world.
It's been too long since we had fans in the playoffs. We're back, and we're better than ever. Woo!
Bet he can't talk this morning. Flyers left Xfinity Mobile Arena pretty happy last night. Dave Uram joining us. Morning, Dave.
Well, Carol, it's just over 2,000 days since the Flyers last made the playoffs, but that drought is over. They clinched their spot, beating the Hurricanes 3-2 following a shootout. Flyers fans will get to watch their team play in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2020, with games at the sports complex for the first time since 2018. Coach Take.
It's been a lot of years. I feel for him. I really do. Like I said, coming in this year, I get it. So we can only do our part and try to build this thing, and I understand their angst. Hopefully this gives them a little bit of belief. A lot of young guys contributed, if you look tonight.
Regular season finale is tonight at home against Montreal, and then the first round of the playoffs against the Penguins. Not bad across.
Rebuilding success, the story of the 2025 to 2026 Philadelphia Flyers. This narrative is about 2025 to 2026 Philadelphia Flyers season. A season of ups, downs, and a miracle. But before I talk about that, let's go back to the last time the Flyers were in the playoffs. The year was 2020, the year the whole world shut down due to the pandemic. The Flyers went on an absolute heater late in the 2019 to 2020 season. I recall the day when the world shut down. After the Flyers' winning streak ended in a game against the Boston Bruins, the Flyers' next opponent would be the Tampa Bay Lightning. The day of that game, I got some really bad news regarding the rest of the NHL season. It turned out that because of the pandemic, social distancing was put in effect, businesses closed down, major sporting events were postponed, and people's lives were turned upside down. If you needed to go out, you would have to wash your hands and put on a face covering mask. The NHL wouldn't start the playoffs until the summer, and the playoffs would be played in the NHL bubble. It was an absolute mess of confusion. Teams of the Eastern Conference would be at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Canada, and teams in the Western Conference would play in Edmonton. Fans would be prohibited from attending due to social distancing, and there would be fake crowd noise. The Flyers would have 3 play-in games, and the teams they played were the Bruins, the Rangers, and the Lightning. The Flyers won all 3 of those games. The first official playoff opponent would be the Montreal Canadiens. The Flyers defeated the Canadiens, and their next opponent would be the New York Islanders. Although the Flyers won 3 games in that series, in overtime the series would end up going to Game 7. The Flyers would be eliminated from the playoffs by the Islanders. The Flyers' 2019 to 2020 season came to end, and the Flyers wouldn't have their next season until January of 2021. The Flyers' abbreviated season was an absolute nightmare that lasted until May. The 2021 to 2022 season started well. The Flyers still had their veteran core along with some new additions. D-man Ryan Ellis, Derek Brassard, and Keith Yandle. The season became a downfall, and it left a bad taste. Flyers would eventually part ways with their captain Claude Giroux. Giroux would be traded to the Florida Panthers in exchange for Owen Tippett. In the summer of 2022, the Flyers would hire John Tortorella as their new coach. Torts brought grit to the team. He was an old-school guy who didn't play around when it came to effort. The 2022 to 2023 season started out well, but the Flyers' playoff drought would continue. The 2023 to 2024 season would start the trend of doing well in the first half of the season would turn out well, but the second half would be their weakness. In the 2024 to 2025 season, the Flyers drafted a 19-year-old Russian superstar, Matvei Michkov. The Flyers played a great first half, but once again the playoff drought would continue. Late in the season, the Flyers would part ways with Torts. One thing I forgot to mention was the firing of general manager Chuck Fletcher back in 2023, and his replacement would be Danny Briere. Despite the playoff drought, Danny Briere would stay patient rebuilding the team. Fast forward to the summer of 2025, the Flyers would hire Rick Tocchet as their next head coach, and they would sign players like Trevor Zegras, Christian Dvorak, and Noah Juulsen and goalie Dan Vladar. The Flyers season started out rocky, losing to the Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes, plus Michkov's sophomore slump would slow down production. But the Flyers would weather the storm. The Flyers would get their first 3 games of the season. The Flyers beat the Florida Panthers at home along with the Seattle Kraken and the Minnesota Wild in overtime. They would lose to the Winnipeg Jets, but late in November the Flyers beat the Florida Panthers 4-2. the New York Islanders in a shootout on Black Friday, and the New Jersey Devils. The month of December was epic for the Flyers. They went into holiday break with a victory over the Vancouver Canucks and the Chicago Blackhawks. The Flyers would conclude the first half with a loss to the Calgary Flames. The Flyers would get a win over the Edmonton Oilers, and after that, injuries would pile up along with controversy. January and February were an absolute nightmare. But after the Olympic break, things started to slightly get better, and the team was not going to give up on their playoff dreams. March was up-down. One day in particular would be Easter Sunday. The Flyers would beat the Boston Bruins in overtime. Porter Martone, a draft pick that made his debut just a couple of nights ago, would score his first goal in overtime on Easter Sunday. The Flyers would also beat the New Jersey Devils in a one-sided victory and a huge win over the New York Islanders. The Flyers would go on to lose to the Red Wings, but ended up beating the Winnipeg Jets 7-3. The outcome of a Sunday matchup would be instrumental in the Flyers' playoff chances, but luckily a team below the Flyers would lose to the Boston Bruins, and that team would be the Columbus Blue Jackets. Because of the outcome, the Flyers would have to win one more game in regulation, overtime, or a shootout. A crucial matchup would take place on a Monday night, and the Flyers' opponent would be the Carolina Hurricanes at a packed Xfinity Mobile Arena. In the first period, the Hurricanes would score the first 2 goals in the first period. In the second period, Matvei Michkov would get the Flyers on the board, and Trevor Zegras would tie the score on the power play 2-2. In the third period, the Flyers had the majority of chances, and it was more of the same in overtime. The game went into a shootout, the same scenario back in early 2010. The crowd nervously crossed their fingers as the shootout began. Trevor Zegras would go first, but no goal. The Hurricanes went next, and no goal. Matvei Michkov went next, and no goal. Hurricanes went next, and no goal. Travis Konecny went next, and no goal. Hurricanes went next, and no goal. Now it was up to Tyson Foerster, and he buried the goal, and now it was up to Dan Vladar, and he did not disappoint as he made the biggest save of the season as the Flyers officially punched there. Ticket into the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2020 and the first time in front of a crowd since 2018. The arena was celebrating, and Flyers fans finally got their wish. After 5 years of pain and frustration, but the pain was all worth it. A team counted out all through the second half defied the doubters. Not only that the Flyers ended the season by defeating the Montreal Canadiens, an added bonus. The Flyers would be facing the Pittsburgh Penguins. In 1989, the Flyers eliminated the Penguins. In 1997, the Flyers would also eliminate the Penguins. And in 2000, the Flyers once again eliminated the Penguins. The Penguins wouldn't get their payback until 2008 and also 2009, and then the Flyers would eliminate the Penguins in 2012. The last time these two teams met in the playoffs was in the 2018 Eastern Conference quarterfinals. The Penguins beat the Flyers in 6 games. Philly was excited for playoff hockey, and the city was flyered up. The Flyers took game 1 3-2. Jamie Drysdale, Travis Sanheim, and Porter Martone had the goals. In game 2, the Flyers shut out Penguins 3-0. Porter Martone, Garnett Hathaway, and Adam Glendening had the goals. The Flyers would then take a commanding 3-0 series lead with a 5-2 win in front of the Philly crowd. The Penguins would end winning games 4 and 5, setting up a huge Game 6. Everyone in Philly was nervous, but hopeful the Flyers would end this series. Game 6 was scoreless after 3 periods until Cam York scored the overtime goal, and the crowd went crazy as the Flyers advanced to the Eastern Conference semifinals. 1 week later, the semifinals took place. A week later, the Flyers were swept 4-0 at the hands of the Carolina Hurricanes. The Flyers put up a valiant effort in Game 4 as they forced overtime. Alex Bump got the tying goal. Unfortunately, it was the Carolina Hurricanes that got the victory in overtime, and Flyers season came to an end. Despite the loss, the Xfinity Mobile Arena in Philly was saying, "Let's go Flyers," and they gave the team a standing ovation. To be honest, the Flyers were not at that level yet, but the Flyers took a huge step this year. The way the Flyers turned things around was remarkable. Many guys on the team improved. One in particular, goalie Sam Ersson, He truly turned things around after the Olympic break. Youngster Porter Martone quickly impressed the Flyers organization and the Flyers fan base. Trevor Zegras quickly became a fan favorite. Sean Couturier was a warrior in the playoffs, Christian Dvorak as well. Despite the ending of the season, it was like a party in Philly and there were so many great moments. But the best moment of all was the Flyers giving the fans what they wanted, and that was playoff hockey, real and authentic playoff hockey. In the words of Bernie Parent, it's a beautiful thing. I would like to thank my friends and my family for all their support this season. I know the Flyers are not at that level yet, but they took a huge step rebuilding success. This narrative is in loving memory of my father, Christopher M. Solak, my aunt, Lynn Sosna, my aunt Marin Altobelli, my friend Vinny, my friend Tom Slavin, my friend Andrew Vizuet, my friend and neighbor Sandy Emmert, my grandma and grandpop, Evelyn Solak and Joseph Solak, and all the wonderful people watching over me from heaven, including the wonderful people I've mentioned.